Hi guys, right, so I'm finally going to do my labour and delivery story. Freddie is not wanting to go to sleep. He's got hiccups at the moment. Show everyone your pretty face. Oh, big yawn. Okay, right. Have you done me back? Right, okay. I've got quite a lot to get through, so this may be a long one, so heads up guys. But, you know, you can't rush these things, and I want to have a very detailed track of what happened. I've been piecing together what's happened since I gave birth, which was on the 10th. Which was on the 10th of July, and today it's the 26th of July. So he's just a little bit over, he's 2 weeks and 2 days today. So, right, okay, so my due date was the 9th of July, 2011, and that the night before, so on the 8th of July, which was the day I did my 40-week update, thinking that I wasn't going to go into labour or anything like that. So the night before I'd had a little bit of back pain, which I had to use a heat cushion for, but I'd been having bad back pain for a while, and I didn't think anything of it, and I just thought, okay, it's just bad back pain. So yeah, it didn't really bother me. And I also made myself, I'm not sure if it has anything to do with it, but I made myself a homemade madras curry. And so if that had anything to do with it, I don't know, but they do say sometimes that spicy food can get things going, so I'll just, you know, add that in there. And I was also taking my evening primrose oil tablets, 2 orally and 1 vaginally a day. So I went to bed about 11-ish, 12-ish maybe. Got into bed, still had a bad back, but like I said, didn't think anything of it. And then obviously the morning of the 9th, so it was about, I'm not sure what time exactly it started, but I remember looking at the clock at about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I kept getting these bad period pains, and I was thinking, okay, this is a bit weird. So, oh, and sorry, I just jump in there as well quickly. And the day before, I'd lost a really tight, like minuscule, like, see if I can rip a piece off of this paper. No, about that much of my plug I lost, like, it was minuscule. But anyway, yeah, so 2 o'clock, I woke up and I'd got bad period pains. And the thing is that they were sore, but they kept coming on and then off. And I was like, okay. And because obviously I haven't been through labour before, so I was like, okay, what's all this about? And I was able to get back to sleep through them for, you know, for a bit, for probably about half an hour. And then by about 2:30, maybe nearing 3 o'clock, they were still coming, and I was like, oh, okay, so is this it, kind of thing? Bearing in mind, guys, that this is my due date and I'd had no signs before. He's asleep. Can you see? Oh, no he's not. I'd had no signs of labour before that, so I was like, okay, I'm having contractions. And I thought, okay, well I kept having Braxton Hicks all the time, and I was just like, okay, well, this is just Braxton Hicks contractions, just quite bad ones. So I went to the toilet and I started needing to have a poo. Like, I don't know why, but I needed to go, and then I needed to wee, and then I needed to wee again and again and again, and I was like, okay, this is freaking me out a bit. I never needed the toilet this much before. Obviously I was getting up during about 3 times a night to go to the toilet, but this was like nothing compared to that. This was just like different somehow. Obviously I'm sure you guys will understand what it's like. Yeah, so then by half that, and then obviously we wrote down, Matt's got an iPhone, and I've got an iPod Touch, and we downloaded the contraction timers, so we were timing them. At this point, obviously, I rolled over and said to Matt, I was like, Matt, I don't think you're going to be able to go to cricket today. I think this is it, kind of thing, you know. So, and we timed them, and they were coming between, not obviously regular, but they were between 5 and 10 minutes, and lasting about 40 seconds. So I took some paracetamol, and I was told, my mum told me, and I think someone else told me, that if the pains go away with the paracetamol, it means you're not in labour, and it just means it's Braxton Hicks or something like that. If the pain doesn't go away with paracetamol, it means you're in labour. And I took the paracetamol, and I was waiting. I know it doesn't take effect straight away, so I was waiting and waiting and waiting for it to take effect, and nothing. So 3:30 a.m. I ran a hot bath, and I'm not usually one to have really hot baths, but this one was friggin' hot, to relieve my back pain. And so I was laying in the bath, and I was still getting these pains, and they were coming between every 5 and 10 minutes. And Matt came into the bathroom and sat down on the toilet next to me, just, you know, not actually going to the toilet, but just sat down on the toilet, and was like, is this it, Jem? And I was like, I think so. And we were just both in shock, because, you know, who goes into labour on their due date? I know, you know, I know people do, and it is, you know, still, it still happens, but apparently it's only 5% actually go into labour on their due date. So I'm one of those 5%, woohoo! So the bath wasn't working, so I got out the bath, and about 4 o'clock I got out the bath, and then I just got straight onto my birthing ball. I was bouncing around on that for a while, and that wasn't working, and I was getting really kind of stressed out because the pains were not going away and the paracetamol hadn't helped. So Matt persuaded me to get back in bed, even though I hated laying down. So I got back into bed, and I think I fell asleep again till about 7ish, and the pains had woken me back up, and they were a lot stronger. So, hang on a second, he's getting quite heavy. So then so it's about 8 o'clock in the morning, and I was really struggling by this point, and I'd taken the paracetamol about 3 o'clock, so I was like in agony pretty much, and I didn't want to take anything else because I thought, okay, it might kill off the contractions, and I was quite ready to go and have you. So yes, I was. So this blanket's too fluffy, I can't get a good grip of him. Yes, I can't. So then, oh my god, I've got such bad brain. Stop wriggling. So then, 8 o'clock, I rang my hospital, so labour and delivery, and I told them about the pains I was having, how long I was having them for, and at this point I hadn't eaten or drunk anything because I've suffered from hyperemesis throughout my pregnancy, and I was feeling sick. So the midwife suggested that I go away for half an hour, try eating something, because she said that the contractions were still quite irregular, and I needed to call back when they were 5 minutes apart and lasting for a minute. And obviously more regular, so like 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. And the other thing she also asked was, you know, how have his movements been? And I couldn't feel him moving because I was too busy focusing on the contractions. Too busy focusing on the contractions that I hadn't been focusing in on his movements. So I was like, actually, I haven't felt him move that much. So she also said that when I ring back in half an hour to let her know about the movements and things. So I didn't call back in half an hour. I called back about 10 o'clock and said that I hadn't felt him move. I had a couple of spoonfuls of breakfast cereal. Yeah, I did. A couple of spoonfuls of breakfast cereal. What are you doing? So you're all fussy, and as soon as I pick you up, you go to sleep. It's typical. Yeah, so I called back and say, yeah, I haven't felt him move very much. So they said, okay, you need to come in and we need to, you know, check up on that. So we get all the rest of the last minute bits for my hospital bag, which were all laid out, and all the rest of the stuff was already packed in the car. So by 10:30ish we arrive at the hospital, and I've had all my checks done, so check my urine, check my blood pressure, his heartbeat, and I was put on a trace with the bands for half an hour, which were picking up, as the midwife put it, irregular contractions, which she was really, I didn't like her at all. I remember saying to Matt and my other birth partner, my sister, that I didn't like her. And luckily, she left soon afterwards, so that was nice. Anyway, so yeah, everything was fine with him. And they said, yeah, everything's fine. We have picked up some traces of nitrates in your urine. Does it hurt when you pee? And I was like, no. So I must have had the beginnings of a urine infection and just didn't know about it. So then we were just waiting around, because obviously I was having these irregular contractions and they wanted to see whether they came to anything or whatever. And in the meantime, she had given me some cocodamol, because I told her that I'd only had been on paracetamol. And even the cocodamol did nothing, bugger all. So 1 o'clock, the midwife had said, right, the regular tightenings aren't getting close together. Your baby's heart rate's fine, you know, you need to go home, because they were really busy. So she brought a doctor in, because you have to see a doctor for them to say, yep, you know, you're fine, you can go. So she brought a doctor into the room to discharge me. But for some reason, the doctor wanted to check my cervix for dilation, because she looked at my chart and she said, yeah, you're having quite a few irregular tightenings here. So let me just check to see where you're at. So she checked me and she goes, oh, okay, well, that's good. And I was like, okay, what? She goes, you're 3 to 4 centimetres. And I was like, what? Because my contractions were still every 5 to 10 minutes. I was like, okay. Yeah, so she was like, yeah, you're 3 to 4 centimetres, you're in labour. And I was like, oh my God. And until that point, obviously, because we'd had so many complications during the pregnancy, and I just couldn't believe it. I was like, I always joked to Matt, I was like, one day we're going to come into hospital and we're actually going to have this baby and we're not going to be sent home, you know. So she was like, yep, you're going to stay here for a while and we'll just, you know, monitor your progress and see what happens. So, and she said that I couldn't go to labour and delivery because they were so busy that I had to stay on antenatal. So, yeah. So by 3 o'clock, by this point, my irregular timings were, or contractions, they were actually contractions, and that's what annoyed me, because I was having contractions, but the monitor was not picking them up properly. I'm not sure whether that's because the bands weren't on properly or whatever, but I was damn having contractions, and it was annoying because I'm sure some of you, you know, will understand this, but when you're in labour, people seem to take you seriously because they think, oh, you know, you're not your usual self because you're overcome with pain and whatever. I was perfectly myself, but no one believed me. And I knew that, I was more further along than I thought. So I requested more pain relief. I said the cocodamol has done nothing. Can I have some gas and air? And the midwife came in and said, no, you can't have gas and air because the hospital I gave birth at is literally so brand new that they hadn't plumbed the gas and air into the antenatal rooms. And she said that I would have to wait until I got into labour and delivery and to see, until I was more dilated. And so I kept requesting to be checked, because I got checked at 1 o'clock and I was like, I want to be checked again. But so she came, the nasty midwife, as I call her, came in and checked me, and she was like, no, you're still 3 to 4. We can give you pethidine if you like. And I was like, because when in my antenatal class, I was like, no, I'm not having pethidine. So yeah, and then, excuse me, sorry. So because I hadn't made any progress in that time, and because I was in labour but there was no immediate problems, by 4 o'clock the midwife said, right, I've spoken to the doctor, she's happy about sending you home, and labouring it out at home until you're more further along. And my labour wasn't progressing. I need to get more comfortable. So yeah, so she said, right, I've got your discharge notes and everything here. There we go. I've got your discharge notes and everything here. When you get more, when your waters go, or when your contractions, become unbearable, that's the time when you should come back. And I was like, okay, and I needed the toilet again, so I went to the toilet, and as soon as I went to the toilet, I lost my entire mucus plug. Like, I thought I was excited from the little bits that I was getting when I went to the toilet before, but this was like a brown, it wasn't green, it was kind of a mixture between yellowy orangey brown, if I can remember rightly, and that just came out like that. And I remember having it on the piece of toilet paper and waddling to the door with my leggings and my pants around my ankles, waddling to the door and going, Matt, my mucus plug has gone, my mucus plug has gone. And then him being like, yay. Yeah, sad, I know, but it was progress for me. So we packed up all our stuff and got in the car, and so by about 4:30, got in the car, was like not even 5 minutes down the road, and my contractions were immense. Like, as soon as we left the hospital, they were coming like thick and fast. Like, I was having, it felt like I was having them like every minute. Like, when I recovered from one, I would walk a couple of steps and then I'd get another one. And at this point, I couldn't talk when having them. I was leaning against the wall, puffing and panting, breathing. People walked past and were like, oh God, I feel for you, kind of thing. And I wasn't talking. I was too busy having contractions. I couldn't care less what I looked like. So within 5 minutes of leaving the hospital, was in the car, stuck in a bit of a traffic jam because it was a Saturday and it was, busy. I was sat in the car, and anyone who's laboured in the car will know that it's friggin' painful to have a contraction in the car, especially with a seatbelt on. So I held on to the handrail on the side, and I kind of pulled myself up, because of the pain. And when I pulled myself up, I felt like I peed myself. Like, when you sneeze sometimes, or when you laugh so much and you let a bit of wee out, it felt like that. And I was like, oh. And at first I thought I had peed myself, but then another contraction came in, it happened again, and I was like, oh, no. And Matt looked at me and was like, what? And I was like, I'm really sorry. He was like, you haven't. And he thought that I'd followed through on the seat, but no, part of my waters had gone, and I thought it was my entire waters, but we found out later on that it was just part of the waters, and then his head had replugged it back up. So we drove to my mum's, which was literally like 2 minutes down the road, so I could change my bottom half of my clothing because it was all wet, and change my my underwear and things like that. So it was very surreal going into my mum's house when I was in labour. It was very surreal. And I was still having these really intense contractions. We left my mum's and we drove, and we stopped off at KFC because I really fancied a drink. I love, when I was pregnant, and I still do now, I loved post-mix Coke. So like it's like the cheaper version. They do like this, it's like a syrup, and then a bit like Soda Stream or whatever, and just tons of ice. And luckily, I got the idea from Millie, young mummy to be. She packed straws in her labour bag, and I forgot to pack straws, but I'm so thankful that I got that drink from KFC because it had a straw, and if I hadn't have had that straw, I think I would have gone insane. Everyone has their own piece of equipment, or, something that, was like a lifesaver during labour, and that straw was my lifesaver. It's pathetic, it's a straw, but it was like the best thing for me because I'd had an epidural and I was bedbound and I couldn't move, and because I was having Entonox or gas and air, it was making my mouth really dry, and I didn't want to hold a cup the entire time and just go and sip, so the straw really helped. So that would be, it's not to everyone's taste, but I said, just take it just in case, because it really helps. And not all hospitals do them, and my hospital didn't even do ice, which is what I really wanted at the time. We got the drink from KFC, and Matt phoned the hospital ward and was like, yeah, we left like 10 minutes ago, and my girlfriend's waters have just gone and her contractions have become really intense, and they were like, right, well, you better come back to hospital then. Yeah, so we drove back to hospital. Drove back to hospital, and my contractions were ridiculous. Like, I was getting, I found out I was having 4 contractions every 10 minutes, and they were lasting well over a minute each time. So I had no time to recover. I thought if this is normal contractions, I am not coping. And I was like getting really upset. I was crying. No one, our antenatal classes hadn't shown us breathing techniques. I hadn't looked up about breathing techniques. I thought, oh, I'll be able to cope, but no. So I started going panicking and hyperventilating and things like that, because the pain was so intense. So we got back to the hospital, we went straight to antenatal because we thought that's where we meant to go, and we're told, no, you're going to labour and delivery now. So I was like, oh God, this is it. We're shown our room, which funnily enough was the same room that we were shown on our hospital tour. So that was surreal, because the last time I was in that room, I was pregnant, heavily pregnant, and being shown 37 weeks pregnant. I was 37 weeks and 6 days, I think. Yeah, or 5 days or something. And yeah, I was back in that room to have my baby. So that was weird. So we got into the room, and they were so busy. There was no one on reception or anything like that. And the head midwife at the time came in and was like, okay, introduce herself, checked him. And then she wanted to check for dilation. So I laid on the bed, and that was agony. Oh my God. Like, I don't know why, but I found which was really comfortable. Like, I'm not going to show you, but like I would lean over a bed and just rock my legs back and forth, rock my hips back and forth like this. So I would do this whilst leaning over the bed. Which I found to be the most comfortable. So she checked me, and I was 5 centimetres dilated, and I was hooked up to a monitor again, and I was found to be having 4 contractions every 10 minutes. And I said to her, I was in agony, and I just said, I need more pain relief. So she handed me the gas and air straight away, and before she could even explain how to use it, I was puffing away. I was just like, breathing it in. I didn't exactly know what I was doing, but I thought, because I'd seen so many programs on the TV, I was like, okay, this is how it is, and yeah, so I did it like that. So I was chugging on the gas and air, which wasn't working. It was just making me lightheaded. I could still feel the pain, and for me it was crap. It didn't work. So I was demanding. I was like, right, what else can I have? I need something else, because I was panicking. Matt and Laura's my sister, were trying to calm me down. I didn't want anyone touching me. Matt would put his hand on my shoulder or try and hold my hand, and I'd be like, get off. I became quite, I wouldn't say spiteful, but I just wasn't myself. Because obviously Laura was there primarily to film my labour, and I've got my entire labour on, well, not the entire thing, because halfway through one of the midwives said we wasn't allowed to film, but I've got film of him being born, pictures of him crowning and me pushing, which is just lovely to keep as a memory, because I've forgotten, obviously I haven't forgotten the pain, but I'd forgotten the experience. And when you're so involved in having these contractions and having gas and air, so you're not really with it. And I was so pleased that I decided to film it. I mean, it's not for everyone, and some people are embarrassed, but to be honest, when you're in labour, you really don't care. So I'm glad that I had, you know, that second birth partner there. So I had, you know, Matt was there primarily to support me, and then Laura was there to film. So I'm glad that was there. So after I'd requested for the next lot of pain relief, I still refused pethidine, because after finding out what it does to yourself and the baby, I didn't want anything to, you know, to affect breastfeeding and anything like that. Yeah, so she said, right, well, the next thing is an epidural. So I was like, fine, do it. And she was like, are you sure? I was like, yes, I want the epidural now. And I don't know why, but for some reason I thought you had to sign a form to have an epidural. But I don't know, maybe they just go by verbal consent now. But anyway, so she was getting me all set up for the epidural with the IV in my hand. And it took 20 minutes for the epidural of the anaesthetist to come in. Longest 20 minutes of my life. But he came in and he did the epidural, and that took effect. With each contraction they got less and less intense. And then she put the catheter in, which I didn't feel get put in at all. And that was about, yeah, that was about 20, nearing 5 o'clock. So 8:30 in the evening, on still on the 9th of July, my due date, I got checked for dilation again, and I was only 6 to 7 centimetres dilated, even though I was having the contractions. They were fine. Oh, I have to mention as well, with the epidural, obviously you can't move, you're bed bound, and I had the straps on, and he was having a few decelerations in his heart rate, so he had to keep being checked, but everything was fine. And when she checked, she could still feel some of my membranes, or my waters, and because the contractions were so intense, I couldn't feel them, but my body knew that I was having them, and it started making me be sick, and I was being sick quite a lot. I hadn't eaten anything all day. When we went to KFC, all I had was a drink, so I hadn't eaten all day, so I was exhausted, I had no energy. And the midwife went to talk to the doctor about my progression, because it'd been, you know, quite a long time since I'd been checked and I wasn't progressing as much. And they started talking to me about having Pitocin to make my contractions stronger, to get my cervix dilated more. And they must have just been the talk of them talking about, you know, Pitocin. And the doctor said, right, so from 8:30, the doctor said, right, because usually they check you every 4 hours, and he said, right, okay, we'll check you again in 2 hours' time. If in 2 hours' time you haven't dilated any further, we're going to give you the Pitocin and start that up again. I needed to have another top-up of my epidural, because it started wearing off on my left side, like severely in my hip for some reason. Yeah, so after that 2 hours, so at 10:30, I got checked again, and I'd finally reached 10 centimetres, so I didn't need the Pitocin in the end. My contractions suddenly picked themselves up again by themselves. But I think the most agonising thing of when I reached 10 centimetres was I was told to wait. To wait. You know, you'd think 10 centimetres, woohoo, all stations go, let's start pushing. But no, I was told to wait an hour. Apparently he was still quite high up, and don't get me wrong, right, like now I appreciate the hell out of being told to wait an hour, because it saved less time pushing, and it meant less intervention, because the higher the, obviously, the more increased chance of you having to need intervention, i.e. ventouse, forceps or a C-section. So we was watching TV, because each room has their own TV, flat screen on the wall. So we was watching TV to try and take my mind off things. I had another top up of epidural. So it was we'd reached 11:30, and I think I was counting the last 10 minutes, and I'd secretly started doing a few pushes by myself. Which the midwife said that was okay, because I felt like I needed to push. And okay, guys, so I'm going to say something. It may freak some people out, but I had the epidural, and I was, as far as I was concerned, when you have an epidural, you don't feel a thing. You have it in your back, and from your back downwards, you don't feel a thing. I felt everything. Everything. I was not screaming, because I'm not a screamer, but I was cursing like anything. It was agonising. That's why I had another top-up of epidural, and that did nothing either. I could feel everything. It felt like I was splitting in two. And I had the need to push. And when I asked, I remember streaming in tears, going, "No one told me that you'd be able to feel it." Because I genuinely thought that once you had an epidural, you can't feel a thing. And I know, obviously I watch all the baby programmes, both UK and American, and I know in a lot of the American ones, they say that you can't feel a thing, and obviously that can make it harder for you to push. But I could feel everything, and I felt so cheated. The only thing that was for me was my legs felt heavy, and I probably wouldn't have been able to walk. And the fact I had a catheter in, and obviously the straps, the wires for my epidural. But I could feel everything, and I felt so cheated out of it. So I'm not sure, obviously that doesn't class me as doing it naturally, but I was told that I pretty much did it naturally, a natural labour, because the epidural kept needing to be topped up. So 11:30, and she was like, my midwife Mary was like, "Right, time to start pushing," and she was like, "Right, I'm taking the gas and air from you. You don't need that anymore." So she like, "Take that." She put one. It wasn't a stirrup, or stirrup. That's what they're called, I think. It wasn't a stirrup. It was just like a footrest. So I had one foot on the footrest, and my other foot in, like, pushing against this my midwife's stomach, which she told me to put it there. So yeah, so I had my legs spread open as far as I could, and I was always told that giving birth on a bed is the hardest way to give birth, because there's not enough gravity or whatever. So I started pushing, and I didn't feel like the contractions were doing anything, and I wanted my sister, because she was trained to be a midwife at one point, and I wanted her, and I know for a fact that midwives, when obviously the mothers start losing it, like I had done, they try and encourage you by saying, "Yeah, I can see him, I can see them, I can see the babies, you're nearly there," when actually you've got friggin' ages to go. So I said to Laura, I was like, "I don't want you to give me any crap. If he's not there, don't lie to me, because I don't need it. I need to be told what's actually going on." And she, she promised that she would, tell me the truth. So I started asking her. I was like, can you see him? She was like, "No." But when she was like, TMI, but the openings of the vagina, the midwife would kind of separate the outer bits, and then you could see his head. And she was like, and that's what Laura told me. So she said, when she separates your vagina open, you can see his head. So I was like, okay. Kept pushing and pushing. And then Laura was like, I can see his head. His head's out. And I was like, well, not head's out, but, I was pushing. And then when I stopped pushing, his head was still there. And I was like, oh my God. And I was so excited. And I was the next thing I said was, has he got hair? Because we always made a joke about, wanting him to have hair. She was like, yeah, he's got hair. It's dark like yours. And I was like, oh my God. And I was so excited. And he was, so nearly here. So then a couple more pushes, and then a couple more midwives came in and were like, oh my God, you're doing really well. And that gave me more motivation. And then at 3 minutes past midnight, out pops Freddie. And I've got the video which I looked at, and once his head came out, the whole rest of him came out. It wasn't, I'm quite lucky in that respect that I didn't have to push further for the rest of his body or anything like that. And my entire pushing and everything was half an hour. So yeah, I pushed him out in half an hour. He came straight out onto the bed, and I was just in shock. I was like, I wasn't crying straight away. I was just like, he's here. That's all you can hear when on the bit that my sister filmed of him being born. I was just like, he's here. My sister started crying. Matt had welled up and he was just in shock. He was like, oh my God. And then he started crying, and then I was just like, I've made it, kind of thing. I hadn't really gone into much detail about it, but last year, because I suffer from the condition hyperemesis gravidium, or gravidium, but I just call it hyperemesis. It's you should look it up if you want to know more about it, but layman's terms, it's just extreme sickness. Your body you're producing too much hormones, pregnancy hormones. You can't eat, you can't drink, you feel sick 24 hours a day, like you're going to be sick. Everything makes you feel sick. You can't watch TV, you can't read, you can't look at things, smells, everything. Sometimes the light can make you go. It's torture, pretty much. I had it with Freddie's pregnancy. I had it from week 5, and it didn't go away fully until week 20. And then I still had bouts of sickness throughout the pregnancy, and then I was sick pretty much throughout labour as well. Obviously, he is worth it, but anyone who's had the condition before will know how bad it is. And so last year, me and Matt found out we was pregnant last year. I think it was April we found out. And I ended up terminating the pregnancy when I was 11 and a half weeks, nearly 12 weeks, because I was so sick and I couldn't do it anymore. And it was the first time me being pregnant, and I didn't know what to do. And the doctors told me the only way this is going to stop is if you terminate the pregnancy. So we had the termination, and I only just realised this yesterday that I had the termination on July the 10th, 2010, and Freddie was born on July the 10th, 2011. So, he's oh my god. It's just like he means so much more, because I had to lose a baby because of a condition I had, and you know, we found out shortly after the termination, so the termination was on July 10th, 2010, and I found out I was pregnant again on November 4th, he ended up coming on July the 10th, which is just so weird, because that was the day I lost a baby, and this is the day this year that I had my baby. So obviously when I spoke in my last video about, you know, the depression and things like that, I mean, I regretted having the termination done. We both regretted having it done. But he's worth that much more to me, because of everything I went through, and I wouldn't change it for the world. I mean, I know everything happens for a reason, and it's just so surreal that I would, you know, lose a baby on one day, 1 year, and then have a baby on one day, 1 year, exactly a year later. It's just so surreal. So when I think about it, it's really hard to talk about, and this is the first time I've talked about it. When I think about it, I even though I lost a baby, I've, you know, Freddie doesn't replace, you know, the baby that I lost, but, you know, he's a good reminder of, you know, the experience, and, you know, he just proves that I'll never forget what I went through, and he's just so worth it, guys. And yeah. Freddie was 8 pounds 8 ounces when he was born, 54 centimetres long, which is just over 21 inches. He had a really long cord, I was told, and I only received a labial graze from birth, so I didn't need any stitches. I was told that from established labour, it only lasted seven and a bit hours, with only 30 minutes of pushing included in that, which for a first time parent is really good going, I was told. He passed his first poo, so his meconium poo, pretty much instantly after he was born, and then we got taken. He had his vitamin K injection, and I had the injection for the placenta, and I looked at the placenta before it was taken away, and it was just amazing. I'm glad I looked at it. And then we got taken up to the antenatal ward about 3 o'clock in the morning, after all his paperwork and everything had been done, and I had my epidural taken out. So yeah, that's my labour and delivery story, guys. So it's quite a long one, but you know, I don't want to rush these things, because I enjoy watching them, other people's. I mean, when he wakes up at night, I use my phone. I use Matt's phone to watch people's updates at night sometimes, because I can't sleep because I'm breastfeeding. I've exclusively breastfed since he was born, and I will continue to, primarily breastfeed, as long as it's going all right. So, yeah. So if you have any comments or anything like that, leave them below. And I shall see you all soon. Thanks, guys. And Freddie is still asleep, so that's good. Yeah, see you guys later. Bye.